What are we making today?
Well, I'm going to let the
You'll find out.
people in the kitchen tell you that. But once again, we are going to be recording, and by late tonight, and those of you who know me well and get emails from me, I think Holly once said to me, you actually emailed me at like 2:30 in the morning, and that's true. The recipes will be up later tonight or tomorrow, and the recording should be up on our YouTube tomorrow or Wednesday. Okay. So in the meantime, we are going to get started. And if memory serves me, God only knows, I think we're starting with my husband, Ross.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. Tonight, I'm going to make Moroccan cigars with matzah as the outside instead of, usually they use either dough or like a phyllo dough, but this is with matzah, and it comes from a book that I've had for 25 years. It's called Matzah 101. Crazy, Beth and I met them 25 years ago when they were doing this tour. And it's a cool book. I mean, they have baklava, different recipes. You know, back in the day, matzah was really, you based everything around matzah. At least now you don't have to. There's other options. But I thought, why not? This is something that we always made. For years, we always used meat, and then we changed it, and we made a duxelle out of mushrooms. So, but tonight I'm doing it with half I made already today with mushrooms, and the other half I'm making with lamb and beef. So let me get started. What I've done ahead was I wet matzah. I just run it under the faucet, get it all wet. I have a piece of paper towel that I'm laying out. I'm going to lay the matzah on top of the wet paper, the wet matzah on top of the wet paper towel. And then I'm going to take another, see, this is really wet. And it's supposed to be as wet as you can get it. Don't wring them out. And then you layer it on top of each other just like this. The wet matzah and the wet paper towels. So this is going to sit like this. You can do it on your counter. You can lay out if you want 3 sections. If you want a matzah, you can do this. So you can do a lot ahead of time. And this is going to sit for about 20 to 30 minutes. Well, this is
Honey, hang on one second.
Yes.
I'm having an issue getting you on pinned. Maya, can you do it?
But people can pin themselves.
Do you want me to hit my
People
screen?
can pin themselves.
They can.
And I'll have a drink while you do that.
If you
And I
go,
think if I do it through speaker view, we're using my speaker so that we're not getting feedback. So people may have to pin it themselves.
yeah,
What does that mean?
That's what I did. I figured it out.
Okay.
to pin someone,
Small picture.
Okay, explain how to do that. You have to go to the 3 dots where it says mute, and if you click on it, it will say it should say pin.
Or it says full screen also.
Should I try to do mine?
Mm-mm.
Huh?
Mm-mm. Everyone got it?
Not no full screen.
Does anybody not see Ross though? Can you see Ross?
You also
Okay.
need to go to the speaker view. If you go to the speaker view and you pin, then you see Ross in the full screen.
Got it?
Nope.
If you're on an iPad,
there
simply
you
double
go.
tap the square that the
Yeah.
person you want to see is in.
Like bring the audio to speak.
Yeah.
Later.
Okay, does everyone have it?
Still small.
Okay, I
Are we
don't hear
good to
anyone
go?
saying no, so we're good to go. Go ahead.
Okay, so
Live theater.
they're soaking. They're going to sit like this for about 20 to 30 minutes. And then what you're going to do is you're going to feel it and they're going to be pliable. I mean, they're just going to, bend. If they crack a little, that's fine. Don't even worry about that. It's going to happen. It's not perfect. It's matzah. sorry for going out of the picture. So what I have here, first of all, you take the meat, and what's cool about this recipe is you boil the meat and a bay leaf and water, and that's it in a pot by itself. But I like to put onions in. You boil it for about an hour. You boil it, then you simmer it for about an hour. And you come out with these meatballs, these 3 meatballs, and I have them in here. And what I'm going to do is process them. This time what I did was I cut an onion in and boiled that. And I'm also going to add parsley, garlic, cumin, red pepper flakes, and lemon juice. And this is what's going to make the paste. And it's more like a pate. You know, I was telling Beth today, you could probably stuff wontons with it. It'd be really good. So I like to pulse it, and then I'm going to scrape it down one time. And then I'm going to pulse it again for a little bit. They tell you to save some of the liquid, you know, so it's in case it's dry, but I kind of like it dry. Really, there's a lot of moisture in the meats and stuff. So let me find my, oh, here it is. To save time, I'm just going to take a little bit out and put it in here, and I'll show you how to next do the matzah that I already have prepared. Oops. Let me just move this out of the way. Oh, and when you, after you fill them and roll them, you brush them, and you use, they say margarine. I used a combination of margarine, oil, onion powder, garlic powder, pepper, and cumin. So, see, you can see it. It's kind of flimsy. I've already cut some. It's really rubbery. So what you do is you trim. Can you see that? Yeah. You trim the edges off. Cut it. You cut them in 4.
I'm gonna come move this to face the counter.
And there's a question while you're doing that, Ross. What kind of meat? And I believe you said it was half beef and half lamb.
Exactly. The recipe calls for 2 pounds of meat, and I did half lamb and half ground beef. So
But you could use any meat.
You can use any meat. You can use turkey, and like I said before, I used mushrooms. I made a duxelle, which I processed and cooked down with some onion and garlic and the same seasoning.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to work out pretty well. So see, it makes a nice, you'll see you're going to make a lot. The recipe, you can make 64 of these. I cut the recipe in half. So what I'm doing now is I'm rolling them up. Let me get my pan over here.
Let me come try to tilt this.
And while you start to roll, 2 questions. Yes, the recipes will go online late tonight. And the next question, Ross, would chopped liver work? I think I know the answer, but it's your dish.
I think it would work, but I think that, you know,
It's a very different flavor.
it's a different one. It's a different flavor. I think it's kind of rich, but it would work. I don't know what you put in your chopped liver. Some people put crackers in. Would you put matzah in your chopped liver? I don't know. Yeah, I think it could work. It may come apart. It may be too fatty. You know, boiling it takes out a lot of the fat from the. So they come out pretty nice. Can you see that?
And then you put the folded side down.
Right, you put the seam side down. So I'm rolling it against the grain. If you see like this, here's the lines. I'm rolling it against.
No.
So the holes are, running around like a ring. If you did it the other way, so we're gonna do one more.
Just not having climbers.
What was
So
that?
somebody asked egg or water matzah. We never use egg matzah at homes, but
We used
I-
to.
I think I find egg matzah to be thicker than plain matzah. So I don't know how it would work. We've never worked with it. But I'm sure it would be okay. The question about chopped liver, I'm sure you could do it, but you would want to obviously season it very differently. And these are really a Moroccan seasoning. So you're going to get something very, very different with that, which is fine.
I also, forgive me, I interrupted by accident, but I also can't imagine that you're gonna put these back in the oven, and I don't know what rebaked chopped liver would quite come out like.
Right, I think it would be a little bit gross. I think there's a lot of fat in chopped liver, and the eggs in chopped liver will kind of separate it. This kind of comes together because still it is meat and there's fat in it. So it still comes together, and then when you cook it, it kind of, it dries out a little bit. I think it would separate. I think chopped liver has too much fat in it, and I think with the egg and the would separate. There's nothing to keep it bound together. But you could try it and see. So you bake it for 35 minutes at 400. I change that. I do 375 because it's convection oven. They say to cook it on a sheet pan with margarine. I don't. I just cook it on parchment paper. And that's it. This is how they look. See, they're nice, they're round, come out pretty nice. They make a nice appetizer. You can make a dip if you want. But
So
they're good.
when we host Seder, we have a tendency to have some food on the table for people to nosh during the Seder because it can get long and tedious. So that used to be something we would put on the table as a nosh along with other things. Annette, you have your hand up. Do you have a
I just
question?
wanted to ask what the wash was. Was it egg yolk or the whole egg?
No, it's
No egg.
neither.
There's no egg.
Oh.
in this at
There's
all.
no egg in this. The wash is margarine.
Margarine, I use oil, onion powder, garlic powder,
Oh,
a little
okay,
bit of
that's-
salt, cumin, and black pepper. That's it. I mean, this is
Oh.
very basic recipes. If you look at their recipes, they're 25 years old, so
Yeah.
they're pretty basic. They've taken
Sorry.
like their fillings and stuff are pretty generic. So it's an easy book. They're just, it's getting the matzah down to a consistency that you can fold it up. You can take the same, there's recipes in there that you can make rings like this and put them in muffin pans, and you can season them with cinnamon and sugar and then use them as like cups to put fruit in or custard or whatever you want. It's a fun way to play with matzah. I mean,
Right.
you
So-
can only eat it so many ways.
So the question is again,
But you could,
go ahead, Seth.
I'm so sorry, you
Okay.
could use egg, there would be nothing wrong with that, and use the same seasoning Ross uses, right?
Of course, you could use egg. Usually when you're using a dough or something like that, or a phyllo, or you're always brushing the inside with something. This, you're not doing that. This is only on the outside. The matzah is wet enough that everything adheres together. I mean, and they're pretty durable. They're not going to break.
So
can-
yes, it sounds, again, people are asking about vegetarian. Yes, as we said from the beginning, it could be done. We've done it with a mushroom duxelle, and I'm sure Ross and I
I
can,
can tell you what a duxelle is too.
well, we can add it to the recipe.
Oh, we'll add it to the recipe.
And
so
then
that
the
way-
question is how about schmaltz?
Schmaltz for what?
Schmaltz for what, Sue Cherlin?
To spread on top.
You could, definitely. You can put schmaltz anywhere.
Okay.
You could put.
You know, it's like butter. It's always better,
Right.
right? Annette, do you have another question? Your hand's just still up. No? Okay. Okay, any other questions about this or? Judy Gottschalk votes for Schmaltz. Of course you do. Of course you do. That is not
You know our-
shocking.
You know our backgrounds when we
There
talk
you
like
go.
that.
There you go. And ours is, we are not prepared for Pesach just yet. So we're going to be enjoying these in the next couple of days. So
Passover, when's
Okay.
Passover?
when's
Yeah,
Passover?
we get to pass early.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
yeah, we have the kitchen, everything's turned over. Beth
Everything's
did it- Beth
ready.
Did it this morning.
We love Passover so much, we do it for 6 weeks in our house.
Beth, what do you
Yeah.
like to dip it in?
What do we like to dip it in?
We have.
Schmaltz.
To dip it in.
I don't usually dip it in anything because it's got an awful lot of flavor with the margarine and the seasoning on the meat. I don't eat meat, but the seasoning on the mushrooms and then the seasoned margarine on top of it as well. It's very flavorful. I mean, I've got family here who's had them. I don't remember us ever dipping them specifically because it's just got a lot of flavor. I mean, again, you could, if you have something you'd enjoy, I can't imagine it would be bad with like a tomato-based sauce,
A tomato or like.
Yum.
right?
Yeah, almost like 1,000 would be good. A spicy like chipotle would be nice with it.
Sure. I personally am very happy with them as is.
They're
So
good.
they're really, really flavorful. And people are saying hummus and tzatziki. Sure, when it's not, well, first of all, hummus, depending on your observance with Quinoa, et cetera, a tahini for sure. Again, depending on your observance with Quinoa, tzatziki, depending on your observance of kashrut. Certainly with the vegetarian, you could
But you
do that.
could make a para tzatziki with mayo and cucumber and dill.
You could.
You know, a little bit.
Yeah.
You could.
Or if it's the vegetarian cigars with the mushrooms, you could put tzatziki all over it.
For sure, for sure. Marguerite said, or just grated fresh tomato like they do in Israel. There you go.
There you go.
So there's plenty to do with it. It's really whatever you enjoy, how you enjoy it. So that's it. And if we don't have any other questions here, I'm going to turn our screen over to Dr. Krosner, and you can spotlight him as well.
Okay, so double tap me, spotlight me. Here's my empty sherry glass because I enjoyed a little sip of sherry while Ross was cooking. So this will be a relaxed kind of cooking of the next two dishes. Hopefully it won't hit me too hard. I'm going to show you two different Sephardic fish recipes. Both are pretty easy. One is a little bit easier than the other. And I'm going to start one and then make the other and then come back to the first. So the first one that I'm making is called pescado con, I'm going to say it wrong, con agristare, which is Ladino for fish with lemon egg sauce. And it is the ancestor of the Greek avgolomeneo, lemony, creamy sauce. It was cooked originally by the Jews in Spain before they were expelled. And it's a kind of non-dairy creamy sauce. It's nice. The traditional way is to fry the fish fillets and put this sauce on them. I found another way that I think is healthier, which I'm going to poach the fish and then use the poaching liquid to make the sauce. So what I have here is my pan is already on the heat to save some time. And I've put in 1.5 cups of water. And I'm going to squeeze half a lemon into that water to flavor the water. And I had to cut my lemon into a few different pieces, so I have to do it a few times because each of my pieces is smaller than a half a lemon. And the fish is going to cook in this lemon water. And you're also going to want to put some salt in the water. And some pepper. And parsley, some chopped parsley that goes right in the poaching water. And I've chosen salmon tilapia would work, a white fish would work, and I've already skinned my little salmon fillets. And I'm gonna put them in, as many as this little pan will hold. They're gonna cook. And we're gonna come back to this dish to finish it and make the sauce at the end. So they're gonna take about 10 minutes to cook. You don't want them to overcook. Let me cover them up and set them going, all right? If you were gonna fry them, you would sprinkle them with half a lemon, salt, and pepper, dip them in egg and saute them in some olive oil, and then take them off the heat and set them aside. But I'm gonna poach them.
Seth, the question is what kind of parsley?
Well, I was taught by a certain someone that only flat leaf parsley is fancy enough for company. So I bought some flat leaf parsley.
Was
but
that,
you could
was that
use
person
curly.
related to me and doesn't live in my house
That would be it. That would be the one.
and not my mother? Okay.
All right. For company, I was told by Judy Rosenthal, our last chef, that you use flat leaf Italian parsley.
It
My
doesn't get
next-
stuck in your teeth as readily.
I always,
Both get stuck in your teeth. My second dish, I had some choices to make. There are all over the Sephardic world fish cooked in pepper sauce. And sometimes that pepper sauce is tomato sauce with some peppers. Sometimes that pepper sauce is just peppers. Sometimes the fish is fish meatballs, like we would make a gefilte fish. Sometimes it's fillets. I'm using the same salmon I already bought. So what I'm doing is I put a generous amount of oil in this pan, and I'm gonna set that on the heat with some garlic and onions. This is about 2 cut up onions. And 2 cloves of garlic that I've thinly sliced, and they're gonna go in there. And I'm gonna saute them for about 4 minutes, let that aroma bloom and for nice.
Wait, Seth, I'm going to humor you with our friend Judy Gottschalk, who said, my mother used to say they fed the pigs in Hungary with the regular parsley.
Because it isn't the parsley for company, for nice. So I'm heating, I got nothing, Judy Gottschalk. I'm heating
Carolyn
up.
wants to know red or white onion.
Well, I happen to receive 2 or 3 slices of red onion in my men's club bagel box, and I don't put raw onion on my bagels, and so I thought I will save these and use them. So I have some red onion and some white onion, but you could use either.
And Kaylin wants to know her rabbit Freckles likes both varieties.
Of onion, red and white?
No, parsley.
I knew that, I was kidding. You're giving a rabbit some onions, you're gonna have a rabbit with some bad breath.
This is becoming the best comedy show.
Thank you.
It's
So I'm
coming to
sorry.
Netflix next year.
Netflix, we can Netflix and chill with it, which I found out doesn't mean watch Netflix. So I'm sauteing these onions and garlic. I'm gonna shorten my saute time. I would normally do it for another minute or 2, but I want them to be soft. And I'm cutting a little bit of a corner. And here I have some beautiful peppers, red, yellow, and orange for a variety of colors. But you could use just red, that's the traditional way. And I'll tell you what, I wouldn't use green, it won't be as pretty. So I'm gonna take these peppers, and I'm gonna put them in with the onions. And I'm gonna stir them around for a little bit. You're gonna want about 4 or 5 minutes for the onions alone, another 4 or 5 minutes for the onions and peppers together. and I'm having a little trouble hearing over the sizzling, but it's starting to smell so nice in my kitchen. Now, I'm gonna cover it so you can hear me and I can hear you better. The traditional sauce, I saw some recipes and I was going to not use tomatoes, but I just couldn't resist. But I want this dish in this instance to be mostly pepper. So I'm only using just a little bit of tomato, a few thin slices, just to add a little extra something. And this is gonna cook down. It hasn't done it yet. So I'm gonna give it a little more time. The traditional name for this dish is crème, not like our grain, which is horseradish and beet, but the crème with an M, and it's typically Moroccan fish meatballs. But Moroccan flavors.
I just make a correction, it's Jaime.
Thank you, Judy. I've always said it wrong all these years.
Yeah.
Say it again.
Jaime.
Jaime.
And is it a Hebrew or an Arabic word?
I don't know, but it's in all of the Arab Judeo cultures as a recipe.
I am so glad you got me to know it correctly. Thank you. My pepper sauce is coming along. It's not quite soft enough, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the seasonings, which are always paprika, a generous amount. I use at least a tablespoon. And optional, not to me, but to the recipe, optional is cumin. I put cumin in most Sephardic dishes. Not as much as the paprika, but some. And the recipes, I'm going to put the tomatoes in now. The recipes don't call for acid, the ones I saw. Some of them do, but most of them don't. But I cannot resist that this needs a little bit of lemon squeezed on it, just to give it some acidity and interest. And also I put salt and pepper. Now in Moroccan cooking, this would be very hot. So I'm going to sparingly use some cayenne pepper. And what you're going to do is you're going to let that cook with the flavors until all the vegetables are soft. And then when they seem soft, I'm just trying to stir them around. I didn't have quite a big enough pan.
The question is, what kind of paprika?
Paprika, well, if you use hot paprika, then you won't need to add any of the cayenne. But if you use sweet paprika, you probably want a little bit of heat, which you could either achieve with hot paprika, with cayenne, or if you can't get cayenne for your kosher for Passover bottles of cayenne, you could also have cut up a hot pepper in with these other peppers, and that would work. And I'm just going to bring this pan over and show you, these aren't quite soft enough yet. You want them cooked and a little softer, but the smell is just so amazing. And I've got it all stirred. And then when the vegetables are soft, you're going to take water, a cup and a half, and just put it on them and let them boil some more. And at the moment you put the water in, you're going to take your salmon fillets and you're going to lay them on top of the sauce. And you're going to cook for like 5 minutes. This salmon will take 10 minutes. So you're going to cook for 5 minutes, and then you're going to take your hot vegetables and sort of scoop them out from under and pile them on top of the salmon for the other 5 minutes of cooking. If you were using tilapia, it would cook a lot more quickly than that. So while that sauce is continuing to turn into sauce, I'm going to show you how you are going to finish your lemon sauce for the other fish. I've been poaching my fish here all this time. and it's ready. So you're gonna take your trusty kitchen implement of choice, and you're gonna take the pieces of fish out. You're gonna leave behind the lemon and the parsley. If some of the parsley sticks to the fish, it's not the end of the world, no big deal. You leave it on the fish. You're gonna be covering it with sauce anyway. And then I'm gonna show you how we're gonna make the sauce. So, I'm gonna put my fish aside, and I'm going to take 3 eggs, or 2 eggs and 1 egg yolk. I'm gonna beat them. Whoop them. Something here. We're going to be using a technique you learned from Judy Rosenthal last time called tempering. I'm going to cut this lemon smaller so I can use it more easily. And I'm going to put into my eggs, I'm going to squeeze half a lemon. So now you've got the sort of double layer of lemon flavor. You've got the lemon in the poaching liquid, and you've got the lemon in with the eggs. And I love lemon, so I'm gonna just do a little more lemon than that to make it super duper lemony. And then you're gonna need a thickening agent, which the most convenient that I happened to have on hand was potato starch for Passover. I went into my Passover cupboard with a new clean plastic spoon, and I took out a couple teaspoons of potato starch, but you could also use some Passover cake meal. And if you weren't making this dish for Passover, you could just use a tablespoon of flour. Now the trick is, you want this to be lump-free. So I'm just whipping. Get all the lumps out as best I can. That looks pretty good. Smells lemony. Now you have to temper this. If I take this and pour it into that poaching liquid, I'm gonna have 8-drop soup. And I don't want that. I want a uniform sauce. So what I'm gonna do, and you were shown this technique last time by Judy, it's a really easy technique. I'm just gonna take the hot liquid, I'm gonna temper those eggs. I'm gonna put a couple teaspoons in, a couple tablespoons, 2 to 4, and then I'm gonna stir it in. That's called tempering.
Seth, I received a question asking, what kind of spoon do you use?
Oh, you mean what's the measurement of the spoon?
No, are you using a special spoon to temper what you're doing right now? Is that a special?
Yeah, I just took a soup spoon or a tablespoon out of my dairy drawer because I'm making these dairy, and I just scooped some of the liquid and put it in my measuring cup. And what I forgot, which I'm gonna add now, is a little more salt. And then I'm going to take this tempered egg mixture and pour it back into the poaching liquid slowly. And I'm gonna whisk the whole time.
Which salt do you prefer? Do you use like the kosher salt or Himalayan salt?
I love kosher salt, but Phil and I found at Costco this pink Himalayan salt, which is kosher and kosher for Passover, and you grind it, and it's super fancy and impressive. It's even fancier than flat leaf parsley, in our opinion. And now what I'm doing is I'm just whisking. The heat is not high on this. If you overheat it or heat it on too high of heat, it's gonna curdle. So all I'm doing is leaving some heat going while I whisk. And it doesn't take long at all, and you don't want it to boil. If it boils, it's gonna be like a curdled, lumpy sauce. So I'm just stirring, 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 and letting it get thicker, and it doesn't take long. And as it comes near to boiling, it'll be done. And I'm gonna turn the heat down on my other dish, because I don't wanna go crazy over there. Nice.
I have a question if you prefer a wire or a plastic whisk.
I like wire because it sounds nice in the pan, but there's no real rhyme or reason to it. I'm gonna see how thick this is. It's too thin, but it tastes amazing. If you were sauteing your fish, you wouldn't have the poaching liquid, you would just heat the 1.5 cups of water. So I'm gonna let that go, and while that goes, I'm gonna put the water on my pepper sauce, and while you're not looking, I'm gonna cook that other salmon in the sauce. And if you want, if it looks really pretty at the end, I'll show it to you after Judy's done cooking. But I just want to give you a sense that this is really a relatively quick sauce to make, because I'm using a different spoon for sterility, a different handle of the fork. And it's not quite thick enough, but it's getting there. So let me get a different spoon just to show you the thickness that I want it to go a little more.
And let me just say that what Seth's doing with that is a very common process with Passover, with egg on top in a double boiler, because you've got to do it with lemon and for dessert preparation and all sorts of things. So it's a good process to learn.
So this is thinner than you want. You want it to be a little thicker, but you see it turned from complete liquid to kind of somewhat thick in just really a couple minutes. So while I watch Judy's show, I'm going to bring it to the right thickness. But I'm going to give you just a couple pointers. These dishes are both traditionally served cold. They could be warm, but they're traditionally served cold. And while you're cooling this lemon sauce, a nice trick is to put some saran wrap, some plastic wrap right on its surface, so the sauce doesn't get a skin while it's cooling. And then you can pour it on the fish right before you serve it. You can make it the day before Passover, serve it as a cold dish. It's all done a day in advance. And the other thing that's good about these dishes is that if you're just having a small gathering, it's not worth trying to think about making gefilte fish, because it's hard to make that in a small quantity for 4 people. But these dishes, a few pieces of salmon, they're a snack for a small group. And like gefilte fish, they're served cold. They can be done the day before, save you some trouble. So this isn't quite thick enough.
Seth,
Yeah.
somebody is asking, could you use capers? And I'm going to guess you absolutely could, but
Sure.
capers are not easy to find kosher for Passover, just so everyone knows.
They exist, and every few years they show up at one of the stores in LA.
Every once in a while.
Yeah, and the other thing you could do if you want your sauce to be, for the green in the sauce to be a little more vibrant, you could put your parsley in at the end instead of while you're poaching the fish, because it doesn't have that much flavor to the poaching liquid. It's really mostly for color. And at the end, this is going to be a pale yellow sauce sitting on pale fish. So it's nice to garnish it with some fresh chopped parsley. The pepper sauce gets garnished with fresh cilantro, which I also have ready. So I think unless there are other questions, I'm ready to turn it over to Judy. And then I'm going to let my sauce finish cooking for a little bit and then cool.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Before we move over to Judy, I am going to say I received a question asking if the Moroccan cigars could be frozen. And I can tell you that I have frozen them in the past. I would wrap them really, really well, multiple layers, and in saran or something, and then put them into a Ziploc and then just reconstitute them again in the oven. But they were fine. They were fine. So Judy, we are going to switch over to you.
Okay. I'm going to do two quick recipes because after all, we've got elaborate appetizer and fish course, and then whatever else anyone serves at Seder for entree. You want the rest of it to be pretty easy, I would think. So before we begin, let me just show you, I've got a little bit of an array here just to point some things out. Costco, if you want an easy dessert and you like this, it's a great value and they're delicious. They are chocolate drizzle coconut macaroons, kosher for Passover parve.
And the bottoms are completely chocolate.
Oh yes, they are really good quality. Bottoms sit completely coated. Also, there's Costco La Jolla yesterday, Yarden Galilee Pinot Noir wine. Let's see, or there. So, and there's things you can get over here at Vine Ripe year round that you might not realize are kosher for Passover year round, like these olives and pickles, kosher for Passover. And Trader Joe's coconut milk is considered by even the Orthodox authorities to be kosher for Passover, acceptable, even though it doesn't say Passover, but it is kosher parve. The regular and the light. This is an easy treat for a dessert, chocolate spread, the parve, kosher for Passover.
Matzah.
Yeah, on matzah.
That you can find at Vine Ripe usually.
Yes. Also, things you just, it's always good to look closely at things. The 99-cent store last year in the teas, I look and on the box, on the back, it's kosher for Passover. And some made raisins, kosher. The P is Passover. P is not for parve, it's Passover. So there's just some tips. So, okay, so now I pre-prepped everything. I'm making from the Yotam Ottolenghi Jerusalem cookbook, which I love. And one year I do theme Seders, and my Seder was all recipes out of this book that I adapted for Passover. So this is an adaptation of one of them. Okay, so a head of cauliflower that I've already drizzled with oil, salt and pepper, and roasted and cool goes into a bowl. A large celery stalk cut on an angle into 1/4-inch slices. Then, let's see, then I'm putting hazelnuts that have been toasted in the oven and chopped. Pomegranate seeds, because the recipe calls for it. I know it's a weird time of year for pomegranates. I happen to have some in my refrigerator, but you could also use raisins or another dried fruit, just something for color contrast. It's really all about the contrast. Some flat leaf parsley, leaves, not chopped, just leaves, not the long stems. Okay, now there's cinnamon, allspice. Then it calls for sherry vinegar. Now that's probably impossible to find for Passover, and especially in San Diego. But you could use white wine vinegar, whatever. Here's a tip I use, especially if I've got a bottle of pricey kosher wine and it wasn't all drunk, or any wine, I'll save it and use it for vinegar. So this is Galilee Moscato from the past. So that's my vinegar. And the original recipe calls for maple syrup, but that's not available for Passover, so I'm going to use honey. And then some a little bit of oil. The oil in the recipe, which you'll see in the printed recipe. It's 5 tablespoons. You use 3 to roast the cauliflower, and then you use 2 more in the dressing. And then it's just tossed together lightly. And
Here's a question. Has anybody seen date syrup kosher for Passover?
I happen to have some, and I've seen it, but I haven't looked for it this year because I have some left over from the past.
It might be at Vine-Ripe.
Maybe. I have found that Vine-Ripe's a selection of Israeli products, grocery prepackaged, has decreased. All these stores, what they have to offer is according to what people have been buying. So when you don't buy it, they are not going to continue carrying it. So that's why I like to shop around and give everyone some business so they'll keep buying stuff. So here's this dish. So that's a nice side dish salad, room temperature. So that's easy. Now I'll move on to my next.
Judy, before you move on,
Yeah.
do you think that dish could be made the day before, or would it be better to assemble it the day of, even if you had made all the ingredients the day before?
I think you could make it the day before. I honestly do. I tried it, especially Passover. There is no way to have everything be perfect like a restaurant. So it's just the way it goes. And you know what, this year with the first Seder on Saturday night, if you're observing Shabbat, then you've got to have everything ready Friday afternoon.
Sure.
So that's just the way that goes. So just like Shabbat in the winter, when candle lighting's at 4:30 and you're not eating till 6:37, nothing's going to be super fresh. It's just the way it is. Okay, next recipe is, and this is something just that I've done. If you look at recipes just during the year, you'll find that most everything can be adapted for Passover. You just don't realize it. You don't think in that direction. So I like Mediterranean cooking all the time. So this is tabbouleh, and instead of bulgur, I'm doing it with quinoa. Quinoa is pretty universally accepted by all branches of Judaism now for Passover because it's not chametz, it's not kidneyot. It was too new world to be lumped into the category of kidneyot. They didn't know about it, so they didn't make it an issue. So the quinoa has been boiled in water as per the directions on the bag. You just buy a fresh bag of quinoa for Passover. Then you add cucumber and tomato, or not tomato, depending on what you want. Every recipe is a little different. This is actually red pepper, because this time of year, tomatoes are not in season and they just have a mealy texture and no flavor. So
is it Persian cucumber?
Yes, it's the Persian cucumber, the only kind I like to buy, because the peel is sweet and delicate and no wax. And the Persian cucumbers are one and the same as Israeli cucumbers. Okay, then chopped parsley, chopped mint. And if you're a person who doesn't like mint, like my daughter Marguerite, then you can leave the mint out or substitute it for coriander, whatever, cilantro, but then there's a lot of people who don't like cilantro because their palate, it produces a soapy taste. That's legitimate. That's not just a person saying they don't like it. Okay, then chopped green onion, olive oil, and fresh squeezed lemon juice. I have the same kind of squeezer as Seth, which is really good if you don't have much hand strength. This does all the work. And then pepper and salt to taste. And a light toss. And you can adjust seasonings, and if you want it a little wetter or less wet, none of this is, chemical reaction. It's all just to taste and to the texture that you like. And then put it in a serving bowl so it looks nice. And this can certainly be done well in advance. And if you're making quinoa, you can make a bunch and just, cook up a bunch, and you'll have it for other recipes throughout Passover. And then add some pretty garnish. After all, you're entertaining. Even if it's just you, you deserve it to have it look nice. And so that is my, and here, you can also put some mint. See, this is why it's good to have mint in your garden, so you don't have to go buy everything all the time. The mint, the lemons, all from my garden. So also another idea for Passover that's really nice, if you like spicy, Moroccan carrots are a really nice Seder idea. They're not filled with oil, they're easy, you can do ahead of time. And then a fresh vegetable, a little hot vegetable, and there you've got your Seder. Okay.
Great. Any questions for Judy?
Those both look amazing, Judy. How long do you think the cooked quinoa would keep? Like if you made extra quinoa, would it keep days and days, right?
Yeah, it would keep days, and you can freeze it. Quinoa is kind of miraculous because you can freeze it. It doesn't seem to lose the texture, the quality of the texture. Like rice gets really dried out in the freezer. You can constitute it with a few drops of water when you reheat it. But quinoa is really, it's kind of miraculous in that way. And,
Judy, there's a question asking, do you need to let the wine turn to vinegar?
Well, it's any wine that ends up in my pantry for vinegar is because it's been sitting and the bottle didn't get finished and it's already turning, or I opened a bottle and it's maybe didn't taste right to begin with. It tasted like vinegar. So that's what I do. But I don't think it really makes a whole lot of difference.
Okay.
You can use apple cider vinegar during Passover, or you can, if you're lucky and can find Passover vinegar. But I'll tell you, I was at Ralph's La Jolla yesterday, and it's getting harder and harder in San Diego to find all the things you were used to finding.
Right. Any other questions for Judy? Otherwise, we're going back to Seth's kitchen.
Oh, let me just give another tip, because I was also at Costco. I was at Marina Boulevard. So they have kosher for Passover marked the vacuum wrapped smoked whitefish, whole whitefish, and lox, and different cheeses. So
Yes, and she did my personal shopping for me, and it was greatly appreciated. And it is in my house now. Okay, we are going to go over back to Dr. Krosner's kitchen.
So you're just gonna see the 2 plates I made. In fact, let me do this. This is the salmon in the pepper sauce. It's just got such a beautiful color, such a great flavor, such a great aroma. And this is the agrestade, but I will confess to you that even leaving it a tiny bit too long on the heat, do you see how it's not velvet smooth? It has a little bit of bumpiness to it. That is because it is relatively easy to curdle that sauce. Tastes just as good. These both taste amazing. I snuck a taste while Judy was cooking, but those both look beautiful. They can be served cold, and I put some garnish on them for nice. Do you have any cooked matzah cigars to show us, or are they still in the oven?
We did show some
Here,
before,
I'll
but
show you them.
we did show them before, but Ross just pulled some more out of the oven. You want to just bring it over here? Gotta lift it up a little higher. There you go. Can you see them on my screen? There you go. Fresh from the oven.
Wait, can you show that again? They flash before the screen.
Hold on. I'm a little nervous with
It
a
was
hot pan in front of
literally
my
a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
coming, a flash in the pan, exactly. Hang on. Here he cometh. You see him?
Oh, they're nice.
And I can tell you, I've had the good luck of tasting them. They're delicious.
They
Thank
are
you.
yeah,
I'm gonna have one now.
Yum.
they are delicious. I'm hearing from my nieces.
I usually choose not to eat matzah in any of my foods, but that one's worth it.
Yeah, neither of us are big Judy and myself are not big matzah eaters, but those are definitely worth it. Are there any questions? We're happy to take any questions if anybody has anything. Nothing. Feel free to jump on there. Okay, well, like I said, tomorrow, by tomorrow afternoon at the latest, the recipes will be up. The recording will be up soon as well. If you do have any questions, feel free to email me. And it was great to have everybody join us. Chag Sameach. Is anyone taking orders? Yes, Ross takes orders for me all the time, Sue. It's a great question.
I saw a question regarding the least crumbly matzah, and that would be the original matzah, which was much more like soft.
Right.
I did notice from years past, this I think maybe the second time we've ever used the Israeli matzah. Okay, well, I have. It takes longer to soak, and you need a lot more water than like the Manischewitz for some reason. I don't know why. But it takes a little bit longer to soak.
The Israeli matzah tends to be thinner and crispier. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I find it thinner and crispier. That's why I prefer it to the thicker American matzah.
Which is your favorite Israeli brand? I like that Judah or Yehuda.
Yehuda.
Well, from official taste tests that have been done, and I've read articles, Yehuda is considered the best of the Israeli matzahs.
And Ross uses plain matzah. I use Yehuda whole wheat.
So do I.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's a really miserable holiday.
Chag Sameach, everyone.
Chag Sameach. Everybody have a wonderful holiday.